Hello and welcome to the Commonwealth Conservative Podcast. I am your co-host, Jeff Semon. He is the man who is a bit unruly. He's Rep. Shawn Dooley, soon to be chairman of the board. Hope you can join us in this big adventure that we're about to embark in. Shawn?
Good evening.
How are you, sir?
Not bad. I appreciate you coming over again on a lovely evening. It's a little rainy, but that's all right.
Happy to do it as I cut the music off abruptly.
Yeah. Well, I've got one of my favorite bands, local band, is working on a new theme song.
For the
Gobshites, a good Irish punk band.
Nice.
Nice. They did the theme song for the Patriots, the Let's Go Patriots, a few years ago for BCN.
Oh, perfect.
And so he's working on something now. He's said he's got 3 or 4 options going. So
perfect. Well, I guess by this time the cat is out of the bag, so to speak. And
the dog is out of the bag. All sorts of
and
zebras and all sorts of wild animals are out of the bag.
We are in charge of the wild animals, and I must say, as one of your fellow wild animals, I'm very pleased to be on this adventure with you to help get some control and some good practical knowledge in the chairmanship of the Massachusetts Republican Party. If you'll notice the camera, I'll put on my hat. I got this dope new hat. Look at my
It is. But they sent you the wrong one.
They did send me the wrong one.
You were supposed to be a little American flag on there,
but you know what? When they make a mistake, you just buy 2.
Oh, wow, that's
yeah.
I'm
fiscally responsible.
You are some marketer's wet dream. That is well, send him the wrong one. He'll buy another one. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I know they got me really good, but I like this.
I do like that. I actually like the state seal on it.
Yeah, who's the guy right here? Who is that?
Steve. I think his name's Steve.
No, he was an Indian chief, I believe. American chief, yeah.
Actually, he was. This is how you know you've worked at the State House too long. It was originally just a depiction done by a guy over in England, the original seal.
Really?
And it was his idea of what an Indian looked like. He was basically wearing a hula skirt and a lei around his neck, and it was a white guy with a big nose, and it said basically "Come save us."
Okay,
and it was the motto of.
So this will be canceled soon.
Oh no, that is
canceled.
There is 7 or 8 bills out there already to cancel it.
And you're not even exaggerating.
I am not. No, not at all.
Well, order them while you can, and it'll be a collector's item. But we got a lot to cover today.
We do.
We got a lot to cover. We are, after the presidential election, we are still in the midst of the COVID pandemic. We've got a lot going on. But let's get everybody up to speed here, especially in the Commonwealth. We like to focus on the Commonwealth and what Massachusetts.
It's the center of the universe.
It is. And we need to, we do have a lot of brain power here. So I'd like to think that we can conquer a lot of things that face us and the adversity that faces us. And one of them is this pandemic. But, it starts off with some criticism so we're in, the 7th month in the full swing of this, I guess.
Right.
Coming up.
7.5.
Yep. Started in February and March. But the shutdown really started in March. So recently, Governor Baker, our Republican governor, who I'm happy to support on many an occasion, and definitely am happy that he's in the corner office. He came down with a mandate, one that I'm not so happy with, that I want to get your opinion on, and I also want to counsel the governor on what I think I'm hearing out in the public and I think would be valuable and hopefully what he'd consider sage advice to actually not burn political capital that he has rightfully earned in doing a really good job at managing the pandemic thus far. And that's he's broadened the mask mandate to all public places.
Right.
And one of the things that he said when he didn't clarify is that he also didn't say all public places indoors. So right. I have a tough time digesting that when I know that the scientific evidence says when you're outside, if you're keeping social distance, you really don't need to put a face covering on because there's the air currents are just so massively overwhelm anything you could put out in the air.
Well, I was going to say, and then there's some, and I appreciate that you're going to counsel Governor Baker.
Yes.
I'm sure he's thrilled to hear this.
Of course.
He reads my blog every night, so maybe pretty soon he'll be watching our podcast as well. That'll be on his much watch He can binge watch it like on Netflix and stuff like that.
No, there'll be plenty of content.
And so, no, I think the reality is, I think he's trying to do the right thing. I think it's, he's just, I think, unfortunately, I think one of the dangers is he's throwing too much out there. And I think he wants to make sure people understand the seriousness of, wearing a mask and the importance of it and things along those lines. And so I think he kind of overstepped the idea. And so what happens is when you tell someone they have to wear a mask all the time, and after Dr. Fauci and all these other people have said, listen, if you're by yourself, you don't need to wear a mask. Matter of fact, it's not great to be wearing a mask by yourself because you're not breathing correctly, and you're breathing your own air and everything like that, and it's and it creates I think a lot of restrictions. A lot of people feel somewhat claustrophobic. There's mental health capacities with it, ongoing issues. And so when you're by yourself, I think for the government to say, all right, we got to do that, I think it's well intentioned, but I think it actually ends up hurting the cause, because I think a lot of people will look at that and be like, all right, I'm all about following the science. Let's do whatever we can. But the science says that doesn't do anything, and it actually might have some negative consequences. So that's a silly law or a silly rule, and I'm not going to do it. And so once you go down that slippery slope, now they see something else and they're like, well, maybe that one's silly too. And I've already broken this one, and I'm not doing this one. So maybe I'll be a little more lax on that one. When it becomes so overwhelming, I think it's easy for people to start being lax.
I mean, that's a good point, because we want people to still take this seriously, because it is a serious problem, and what we're seeing, but we know a lot more about it than we did 7-8 months ago, which is key.
Yeah, the best analogy I was going to say, and this is for all the kids watching home, this is a little more R-rated, but the Boston Globe had a Harvard infectious disease doctor quoted, because Baker was saying, well, we want you to wear it all the time. That way, you don't have to worry about bringing it up and down. It's already up. You don't have to think about it. You're basically practicing good, mask wearing, all the time.
Yeah, just habits.
And I put this on my blog, and some people were offended by it, but it came from the Globes, and it was a Harvard doctor. So what do I know? Harvard doctor. Yes.
We have to pronounce it correctly.
Yes, and I think her analogy was him saying that you should practice wearing your mask at all times, even when you don't need it, is like telling people that you should wear a condom while you're masturbating, because that way you'll be more likely to use one when you're actually having sex.
Shawn, why would anybody take offense to that?
I don't know. I thought that was
a perfectly reasonable analogy.
I thought it was a great analogy. I'm like, it was spot on. I had a picture on the blog of a woman holding a condom, which people took offense to as well. It's and I'm like,
everybody has to lighten up. Just lighten up.
Oh, I know. It's like compared to what
it's fine.
What we see out there. I'm like, hold on. I thought we were okay with women holding condoms. I thought it was women empowerment. No. Not anymore. So,
on to the more of the scientific basis here.
We're not going to talk about condoms anymore.
Yeah, I'm going to move the topic.
Moving on. All right,
I'm for your own good. I'm going to move the topic forward, but it's a good analogy, I think. All right. So, but we do have some charts up on the screen here.
Right.
So I will direct you to the first one. So this is actually pretty serious what we're seeing right now. So the audience at home can see this full screen, make it. But we've got it up in the studio right now. The number of cases. So back in April, May, we had the big spike of the number of cases up to about 3,000 a day. So the peak of where we were at the virus, right? And so obviously it dropped dramatically through the summer.
Right.
We had that lull, starts to creep back up in September. And now as of, we're in mid-November, we're seeing it at those levels again.
Right.
So this is serious that it's coming back.
It's serious, but what we do, and what some of these charts don't take into account, is the actual testing rate and the amount of tests being done.
Very good point.
Back then, some of these days, where we were getting 3,000, but there was only 15,000 or 12,000 people being tested
per day.
So your testing ratio was 18 to 20% of the people being tested were being positive for COVID.
Right.
And there was a ton, it took us forever to get below 10%. Now, I mean, we were in the middle of the summer in September, down around 1.5, 1.6. Now we've spiked back up to about 3%. But we have to make sure we understand that, we're talking 15,000 cases tested versus 80,000 cases tested. So, I mean, there is something, not to diminish the seriousness of it, but it's not comparing, that chart's not comparing exactly apples to apples.
Right. There's far more tests with the same amount of positive results. So that positive rate is a lot lower than it was previously.
Right.
But there's even more data that we should pull up, and we're going to pull it up right now.
Right. And what it also doesn't, really go into effect is, because before, the reason the ratio was so high was the only people really being tested were people that were symptomatic.
Symptomatic.
And now we have a lot of people that are asymptomatic because of the colleges and universities. Many of them are doing testing twice a week with their entire population. So that drives up the numbers. And a lot of those kids are showing up as positive, even though they don't have any symptoms.
Any symptoms.
Whereas 6 months ago, they would have never even been on a list of getting tested because they didn't have any symptoms. There was no exposure and things along those lines. And we didn't have the bandwidth to test them even if we could.
Right. So we're living in a different world now.
Right.
Which is true. And I want to bring up the next chart, which is number of hospitalizations.
And I think this one's a more significant and more important one.
Absolutely. Because when this all first started, if you remember, and I'm sure everybody at home remembers this as they're watching, they remember we have to stay inside. We got to shut it down. We have to flatten the curve because we can't overwhelm the hospitals and healthquit systems. And you know what? I said that makes perfect sense to me.
100%.
Stay home, avoid, because you don't want to be, laying in a hospital bed that's in a hallway or in a garage somewhere, if God forbid, if it got to that point, because those were the nightmare scenarios we were seeing. We were worried about seeing. Right. A lot of them never came to fruition, but we thought they might.
Well, and it was on pace to happen. So, I mean, it was, I think we did a great job. I think Governor Baker did a great job.
And this is where I want to point this,
really bringing that back into place.
Yeah, my sage advice, Governor, but you did it. No, it was a phenomenal job. Phenomenal job. And anybody who might be bashing him on all this stuff has to recognize what he did for the past 6 months, which is outstanding. Okay? Well, left, right, and center of the political spectrum need to understand that.
Well, and the other thing you have to understand is all the information was coming in fast and furious. I mean, you were literally getting it out of a fire hose, and you were doing the best you can, but it was all brand new. And we would have things that would come out at 9 a.m. and by 3 p.m. we'd have the exact opposite, and there was so much conflicting information, even with the doctors. I was on an ambulance. Even the things we were getting on the ambulance, the information of, all right, this is how we're going to treat this particular case. All right, 3 hours later, new protocol, new memo comes out. All right, we're now treating it this way. And then the next shift I'm on, oh, now we're treating it this way. So it was, he was having to try to govern with all this constant information, and there was a lot of bad information coming out as well, and you tried to have to filter out the two.
So what's interesting about what you said, he managed to do that very successfully, in my opinion. What came out this week or last, I guess it came into effect last week, it goes against that.
Right.
Because if you look at this chart and the chart before, you're seeing a spike in cases, you're seeing low hospitalizations, and we know the sicker you get is often due to your exposure to the viral load. You have to be exposed to a lot of the virus, and you therefore get sicker. So we're seeing, early on, healthcare workers getting very sick, or people who got very sick were around it for a long period of time.
Yeah. Or you had, 1 or 2 or 3 or more, 5 or 6 additional conditions,
the comorbidities
that added onto it. Which obviously, if you're diabetic, severely obese, had any lung problems whatsoever, obviously, so those are more significant.
And we know the vulnerable populations now, when we're doing a lot more to protect our vulnerable populations.
Right.
We're doing that currently. People around them are wearing masks. We're social distancing with our grandparents and our parents, and we're taking that very seriously, and we're protecting them accordingly. And we're very often indoors in public wearing masks, which I think has a lot to do with why this hospitalization curve on the chart is still extremely low. And the next chart we're going to get to is low comparatively to the number of cases.
Well,
but it just let me one thing. But so to go back to broaden the mask mandate at this particular time, without necessarily pushing the science behind it that would justify it, it waters down maybe the next order or working with the legislature or next action he needs to take that people will need to listen to, and that's critical.
Right, but I think one of the things that he and his, especially this is a lot of this stuff, it's not necessarily coming from Charlie. He gets to give the order, but I mean he's listening to the doctors in the Department of Public Health, and they're saying, based on our expertise, this is what we're thinking, and this is what you should do, and he goes forward accordingly. But I think if you look at transmission rates in the spring, we were like, in person to person was at 2.5, and that's now dropped down to 1.4. A lot of that is due to masks.
Right.
And the doctors have basically said the only way we get it down below 1.4, which is, almost half of what we were, is better use of mask wearing and better use of social distancing. And so I think, I can't speak for the governor. I like to speak for the governor. He doesn't like it when I speak for him. But I think it's like, all right, how do we get people to understand the severity? All right, you have to wear masks all the time. It's that severe. And to your point, I think that backfires because I think people are like, that doesn't make sense for the people who aren't wearing masks and are I'm not going to wear masks, or I don't believe it, and the deniers. This isn't going to convince them to wear it.
Correct.
And the people who are doing a good job and are wearing it whenever it's appropriately, and but if I'm out by myself walking my dog in the woods, I'm not going to be wearing a mask because there's no other person around. Those are the people who are going to start going, I don't like, this doesn't make sense.
Which is why broadening it, in my opinion, is not the way to go.
Right.
But he's right. Yeah. I think masks do work. And if you're not breathing on objects and those people aren't touching the objects that you breathed on, you're helping to mitigate the virus.
And so I guess the $24 question is, how do you increase mask wearing? And obviously the answer is education.
Of course.
And we need to do a better job of explaining why. Explain we're going from I didn't see this in the news anywhere, the 2.5 to 1.4. I did it on my research and read some articles and got that. And I think if you're able to, being able to really quantify it and be like, all right, look, we just got to get better, and we have to understand, what's going on, and we also have to not be pulling our mask up and down 500 times. I think that's I think that's also a factor into wear the mask all the time. That you're not pulling it down and pulling it back up, and you've touched everything else, and now you're touching your mask. But the reality is, it's hard to breathe with a mask, and if you,
it's hard to hear people.
It's hard to hear people, and after you've been wearing it, especially if you're, exercising, which is still important for people to do. If you're out running, going for a jog, I've tried it. I may or may not have broken the law because I've got I wear the neck gaiter. I keep it around my neck, and when I'm out running, and when I see someone approaching or I'm going to pass someone or anything, well, I don't pass many people, but if I hear someone coming behind me and they're going to pass me, I pull up my mask.
I don't think it's that hard to get from where we know the science will lead us, which is when you're indoors in close contact with people, stay 6 feet away, limit your outdoor gatherings, do public service announcements, create cool videos.
Right.
This is something we talk about, money and tax dollars we want to spend. I'm willing to spend those tax dollars on public education campaigns saying, you know what, stay home and rent a movie, don't have a party.
Right.
that type of thing where it's just
Right.
more common sense,
Right.
continue to wash your hands, all these things. And you erode the next time you're going to need to use that political capital.
Right.
And on deaf ears. You don't want deaf ears because
Right.
I'm not going to listen to him. The last time he said it was he's telling me to wear a mask outside. That's nonsense.
Right. And I think at the same time you got very personal things. It's kind of like when we had when he did the all school kids have to get the flu shot. I've had this conversation with him. I'm like, I'm not a stick guy. I'm more of a carrot guy. I'm like, let's go out. If you would have gone out and said, hey, listen, I've talked to the doctors. This is super important.
Yep.
So I went down to CVS. I loaded up my cart. I put 5 million freaking flu shots in there. I went to the register. I paid for them. I'm giving them away. Every single person in the Commonwealth gets one for free. I've set up all these things. And because parents are overwhelmed and burdened and they've got so many other things, I don't want to have to bring your kid to the doctor or to the CVS. I'm going to hire a bunch of doctors and nurses to go to the school and give them to any child. And if you don't want them, if you want to go to your own doctor or if you want to go to CVS or you don't want to have one, then that's fine. And I think instead of saying, all right, you have to do this or I'm going to punish you with that.
Plus the other thing is the punishment.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say, well,
I don't know many people who've gotten mask fines or anybody that's gotten a mask fine at all.
Right.
I know some businesses that might have gotten dinged,
I don't even know any businesses.
I mean, well, that have, been tried to comply, and businesses really want to stay open.
Right.
So they're trying real hard.
But I don't know of any that have gotten fined.
Oh, you know what? I mean, maybe not fined, but yeah, I can think of people that have said, I know people that have said, this shopkeeper isn't wearing a mask. Just public, kind of like
public shaming.
Public shaming. But, you're going to broaden the mandate and you're not enforcing the original one.
Right.
So, and I've seen people walk around the supermarket without a mask. It's like, oh man, do I want this drama? What's this psycho going to do?
Right.
I got to get into a fight now. No.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
But it's the same with the 10 o'clock curfew, which is more of a suggestion than a curfew. But it's mandatory for restaurants, and I think, well, we were talking about this offline. You force restaurants all closed, 9:30, everyone out the door and home and in bed by 10 o'clock. Put it this way, I'm old enough. Most nights I'm home by 10 o'clock.
It's fine for me.
So 10 o'clock anyways.
It's fine for me.
But the people that, the group that you're worried about, the 22-year-old, the 30-year-old crowd, you're basically saying, all right, instead of having you at a restaurant where there's actually the owner cares about it and
plexiglass, social
and social distancing and hopefully mandating these sort of things, or forcing you to go home, and they're going to end up just going into their into their basement and having a party,
into the situations that are causing the surge.
And that's where the surge is, because they've already said the surge isn't happening from contact at restaurants.
Yeah.
It's happening from small social gatherings where they're very intimate, and once they get into their basement or their living room, they're not wearing masks. They become sloppier. All of those things happen. Yeah. So I think it's one of those things where it's really, really difficult to say, all right, you can't do this. And as a result, people are going to then do something that's actually worse. Yeah. Not to mention, you're also squishing the time where people can actually go to a restaurant. So it's harder for the restaurants to stay open and stay in business.
And stagger the customers.
And it's harder to stagger the customers, because now they're going to want to, if there's any way to get an extra table in.
Right.
Whereas before they'd be like, all right, well, we've got, we have our final seating at 9.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now we have to have our final seating at 8.
Mm-hmm.
All right, how are we going to do this? If we got maximum occupancy, all right, well, we did this measurement here, or we can rearrange this, and we were able to get 2 extra tables. You've actually made the situation less safe. So I think all of these things are, again,
right.
Mr. Governor.
Well, let me go to the last chart, because I want to say that I saw something online recently. So this is that, these are nice problems to have, to be able to speak to a receptive governor who's going to listen to people
right.
who are on his side and want to see him be successful at this, because I can guarantee you, goddamn to you that Maura Healey is not going to use the scientific evidence at her disposal. She's just going to do whatever she sees fit and just drop the hammer. And you're not going to have much recourse. Well, I mean, so let's remember that in 2 years.
Put it this way, that's as I've said from the beginning, all of my pushback on a lot of the governor's executive orders and just what I felt was overreach of powers wasn't because of Charlie Baker. I trust Charlie Baker. I know Charlie Baker. I'm a friend with Charlie Baker. I'm worried about the precedent it sets down the road when all of a sudden it's Maura Healey or Governor Ayanna Pressley or Rachel Rollins, which I know you're looking at me like I'm crazy.
No, those are eyeballs of fear.
I mean, where the Democratic Party is moving, Maura Healey's now all of a sudden her and Joe Kennedy are the conservatives. I mean, how the hell did that happen? I mean, 2 years ago they were socialists, and now they're the old school JFK Democrats, and it's so those are the things that I worry about from a slippery slope argument.
Oh, because they will. You're right. They will use the power
in
a lot more nefarious ways than Governor Baker would.
Right, and since we're not pushing back now, you're basically setting up the precedent to be like, well, Governor Baker was able to have these emergency powers for unlimited amount of time, and so then I get to have them for an unlimited amount of time, and it's one of those things like, all right, where is
because
when's enough's enough?
But we have a real time example of this, of what Gavin Newsom is doing in California.
100%.
And he's buckling it under. None of the things that he's doing are actually having any effect. He's just smashing small businesses, making it life miserable for Californians. So it can happen here. They can don't California, Massachusetts, as they say. We don't want that to happen, because I'll tell you, this last chart we have up, the confirmed deaths since March. Now, none of this is good. And we're going to throw clear as much as we can that none of this is good, but it could have been a lot worse. And there are some things that you are grateful that it's so low, that I'm grateful that it's so low, because of the good leadership that we do have in place.
Right.
So, if anything that comes out of this conversation is that it's a guide to that we like the success and admire what's been done to manage a very dangerous situation so far.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that is flattening the curve.
Yep.
It's tweaking up a little bit. So I'm not saying you say rest on our laurels and say, all right, we flattened the curve, we're done. But, and 20 deaths a day is still 20 deaths too many.
But it's not this.
Exactly.
It's not this spike.
Right.
And
that's what I'm
right.
Most worried about.
So moving on to some other business on Beacon Hill. You are Rep. Shawn Dooley.
I am.
You won a massive victory in your election.
Thank you.
Hey, where's the button?
Hey,
there we go.
We got the crowd.
Yeah.
I'm glad you didn't do the womp, womp, womp.
I'll do that for, I got that queued up for something else. So I'm going to try to read this for the folks at home. And I'll get your comment in a second. So
I always get nervous when all of a sudden you just said, you start off with the compliment and, congratulations. And hey, I found this article and I want to bring this up and get your comments on it, because I don't have my glasses on, so I can't even read this.
It's all good stuff.
Oh, I'm sure.
All right. For Bruce Mall, Commonwealth Magazine. A lame duck House passed a budget amendment Thursday night that would allow women, I'm going to use quotes here, air quotes here, women as young as 16, to obtain abortions without parental or judicial approval, and would also expand access to abortion when the fetus is older than 24 weeks. Backers of the amendment, which passed by a vote of 108 to 49, characterized, I'm assuming you were one of the 49?
I was one of the 49.
Characterized it as desperately needed with the recent shift that has taken place on the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay, so no actual evidence base, just feelings.
Oh, and let me just interject.
Yeah.
2 years ago, when Trump got elected and they were using that same fear factor, they actually passed a law that codifies Roe v. Wade.
Oh yeah.
So the fact that, oh my God, Amy Barrett's going to somehow magically get rid of it. Well, we've already passed a law that said it. So to say that, oh, this is in honor of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and we're protecting abortion, that's just patently false because they did that already 2 years ago. Using the same argument.
They drum up these scare tactics every time.
Exactly.
And to raise money and to be more, in my opinion, fanatical about it. So we'll continue. Passed 108 to 49, characterized it as desperately needed with the recent shift that has taken place in the Supreme Court, which enshrined abortion rights in the landmark 1973 decision called Roe v. Wade. But the amendment itself appeared to have little to do with national politics and seemed designed to address what its sponsors saw as deficiencies in existing law. House Speaker Robert DeLeo's role in passing the legislation was controversial. According to members of his leadership team, he decided to push for abortion legislation on September 1st, the night Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. Well, that's not craven. On November 2nd, he and Senate President Karen Spilka committed to having debates on abortion access in their two chambers because, quote, reproductive rights are under threat at the national level. Probably not, but we will continue to read here. Last week, the speaker said that the budget was not an appropriate place for major policy reforms, which should go through the regular committee process. He shifted course earlier this week and supported an abortion amendment to the budget. Now, that's an important point, I think, Shawn, that we need to bring up.
Oh, yeah. We're in the middle of COVID. We're struggling with billions of dollars of lost revenue. Mm-hmm. Businesses are going out of business. People are fearful for their jobs. People are dying. Everything else that we have going on. We haven't had a budget. We've kicked the can down the road for 6 months. We were supposed to do this in April. We're finally doing it now. And on top of all that, and we're doing it remotely, we're going to throw in as a line item in a $48 billion budget, a little line item on a major policy
literally
issue.
The most controversial topic in the United States.
Correct.
Well, that's just bad politics. Okay. I'm going to continue reading because this just gets better. The amendment passed by the House was also crafted in a way that prevented anyone from filing any amendments to it. Would you care to expand on that, Representative Dooley?
Yeah. I was going to say that's one of those things you love the Democratic Party. Oh, we're the party of transparency. We're the party of we want to make sure everyone has their voice. So what they did was they filed this, and so nobody would be able to attack it and put on additional amendments. Colin Gary, a Democrat from Drake, actually filed 8 amendments to this particular amendment. So what they did was they created a technical amendment. So they put a technical amendment on this one where they changed a comma or a period or a quotation mark. And since we were then arguing the technical amendment, not the underlying amendment, we could not further amend the underlying amendment.
Can't amend the amendment. Wow.
And so therefore, it stifled debate. You could not improve upon it. You could not say, all right, let's see, instead of making it go down to 16 with 0 parental consent, why don't we say, one of our amendments was phenomenal. Let's face it, we talk about sex trafficking. It's real. There's people out there. There's
really?
Horrible, horrible people that have these girls and they sex traffic them. So you could have a 16-year-old sex trafficked girl. Didn't pronounce that right, but
trafficked.
Trafficked. You like that? I'm going with that one.
All right.
And now, one of her amendments that wasn't allowed to be amended was to say that the doctor and the patient had to be
Right.
able to be alone, separate from anyone else.
That makes
for any of the any
look,
questionnaires.
not that that's in no way is that any type of positive situation, but at least that could be, would be, if that situation were to occur, you would have that ability.
There's plenty of abusive situations.
Yeah.
There's plenty of circumstances where a scared 16-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my daughter turned 16 2 weeks from yesterday. I cannot imagine. One, just as a father, I would be just actually horrified that she would go have any procedure done without my knowledge, consent, or anything, let alone something that intimate, that private, that has mental aspects and real physical aspects. I mean, abortion's not just it's not a teeth cleaning. I mean, this is a surgical procedure where things go bad. And all of a sudden now I, as a father, or my wife as a mother, can't make sure, even if we were fine with it.
Even if you happen to agree with it, yeah.
To make sure that the doctor is certified, the place is clean. Mm-hmm. He's not a quack. He's not just some bozo that's saying, oh, yeah. Oh, nope, I checked you. You're pregnant. And he's just,
who knows? Yeah.
Doing whatever.
Yeah.
But there's so many different things. And to say that parents don't have that right, and these girls are so mature that they should be able to do this on their own. At the same time, year before, we passed a law that basically keeps criminals for felonies up to age 21 should be treated as juveniles because they're not mature enough. But a 16-year-old, we passed the law 2 years ago. It's against the law for a 16 or a 17-year-old to go to a tanning bed. Think about that.
But literally,
you can literally get an abortion without your parent knowing about it.
Abortion and voting, I believe, are the only two circumstances where apparently a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old is mature enough to make up their own mind. But all the tanning, cigarettes, vaping,
can't drive in the Commonwealth. You get your permit at 16, but you can't drive. You don't get your license until you're 16 and a half.
But all these other decisions, they're not mature and adult enough to make. Right. But some of the most serious ones, luckily they are.
Right. No,
I mean, it's baffling the logic that goes into this.
Menthol cigarette, doesn't matter what your age is.
Yeah.
You're not mature enough to understand that that's bad for you.
Right.
But
so, I mean, this is, very local for us, and this comes up, like you said, It came up 2 years ago. And every time they want to scare abortion rights activists, and the fanatical left who just is obsessed with this issue, they like to bring up this bill and try to move it forward. I mean, I don't want to necessarily predict it. You're in the midst of it, and you got to hold your cards close to your chest. But where do we go from here? Where does the audience go? What can we do? Is there anything, or how do you stay engaged to know?
I mean, then the next stage, it goes to the Senate. Who knows what they're going to do? Because the Senate is even further left than the House. As we've moved further left, they've moved even further left. And then it goes to the governor. The governor has said on the original Roe bill that he's going to veto it.
Okay.
Now, this is where it gets interesting. Needs 54 for a veto. We're at 49. Are there people that didn't want to get into it?
There are some moderate Dems out there.
Yeah, no, I mean, we had one Republican voted for it, so 30 voted against it, and what was it, 49? So 19 Democrats voted with us.
Okay.
So it was significant. A couple of them weren't, three weren't there. So is it in the realm of possibility if the governor vetoes it and some of these more moderate Democrats start hearing from, their constituents that, you know what, this goes too far.
Yeah.
And at the very least, it should be fully debated, a full standalone bill where you can have amendments and a full discussion, as opposed to sliding it through literally at the cover of darkness. It was like 7:00 at night on a Thursday night, literally sliding it through.
Yep.
Tacked on to a monster
Yeah.
budget bill. It's just not where it
So
belongs.
we'll keep the audience updated on how that's progressing and what they can do down the road. Stay
Call your
involved.
call your senators,
because-
call your reps.
Yeah. Call your senators, call your reps, stay involved, stay engaged on this issue because you can make a difference.
Right.
It's going to come down to a few votes and you can sway them if you'd like to get involved. Right. So we'll do our best to keep you informed about what that will entail. Up next, Shawn, we are covering the presidential election and some of the things that are going on there.
I read something about that on Facebook.
Did you really?
It said I needed to register to vote like every 45 seconds. I did make the presidential election. I did not miss voting.
I X those out. I don't even want to hear. I'm registered to vote. I'm all set. Yeah. But
I tried to, and it just kept popping up over and over again.
Well, there is a lot of controversy on this right now, and it's a fluid situation. It's changing all the time. It'll probably, we pre-tape this, so it might even change by the time we go to air. But one thing for sure is...
We'll splice something in.
Yes. Well, I can splice a few things. We try to be even-minded here and open-minded about this on the Commonwealth Conservative and take an objective look at what's going on. And I think this is an objective look of what's going on. So right now...
you objectively think that we're being objective?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I think that,
we're very objective.
So I
don't know why we have this picture of this dude without shirt ripped off, but okay.
No, that's a different thing.
Okay.
That's your browser was up like that before.
No.
All right. So up here we got, this is a video I'm about to play. This is from Project Veritas. Now, there have been some accusations of voting fraud. There have been accusations of just all kinds of shenanigans that have been vote manipulation.
Always blaming the Irish.
They're the problem.
And their shenanigans and their lucky charms.
Yeah, they're always after them. But I think for this one, there's some credence here. Now, I want to preface all this with, we don't know how the scale of it, right? And the media was saying for a long time that there's no evidence of voter fraud. There's no evidence of any kind of wrongdoing or anything like this. And now actually there's some evidence.
Right. Yeah, they've shifted. Very, very quickly.
Yeah.
They've added a word or two. It went from no evidence to no substantial evidence.
Right.
No, of substantial voter fraud.
And then it went to widespread
because it's like, all right, what is define substantial? I mean, and whether it's widespread or substantial enough to actually overturn an election, but I think that doesn't matter. The thing that the American people want to know is that their elections are safe and secure. And so
100%.
I think that is, regardless of who wins, that's the number one from everyone I've spoken to, is they want to, the uncertainty and some of the optics of some of this, as you said, shenanigans that went on added to the confusion. There was one where I saw a person she was filling out the ballot. As a former clerk, I looked at it and I'm like, oh, I know what she's doing. Those are, the guy across from her who's wearing a mask is reading off because it's a defective ballot because it either had a stray mark so the machine was kicking it, or the corner was bent so you couldn't do it. So we've done that in the past, and in Massachusetts you always have to have a Republican and a Democrat, and they do it together. And she was going out, and you could tell he was going through it, reading them off. She was filling it in, but from an optics standpoint, because people weren't allowed to actually, be down and find out exactly what's going on. They're filming it through a window, and so or whatever. So you see some lady just going down and filling these things. It looks shady because transparency is the key.
Yeah,
you want to make sure, be like, hey, listen, this is what happened. This is our solution. Any questions? Feel free to watch. If we got to stop at a particular time, we're locking it up. We're putting a police officer on the door.
Yep.
You guys can stand here as well. We'll put another police officer on the back door, and no one's in, no one's out. Just doing that extra due diligence, those extra little things, just makes it so much better. And why give someone, if you have a conspiracy theorist, why give them ammunition? Why give them an opportunity to say, oh, look, they did this over here, and that was wrong.
So there's a lot of bad information out there. But
Right.
what we're going to show everybody today is good information, at least solid information of cheating of the election. And to the media's point where they've backed off from no to substantial to widespread, I don't know how widespread this is.
Right.
But speculation would be bad, and we have to, as they say, let the process play out. Because if you're even a Democrat, you want to let this play out.
Right. Yeah,
why would you want to stop this too short from
Right.
happening here?
No,
and you also have to very much seriously acknowledge we're about to play.
Right. Perfect.
So let me cue this up.
Let's see if it plays.
Oh, it'll play. I'll make it play.
You're going to make it play one way or the other?
Yeah.
It's not playing yet.
Here we go.
Here we go. We're going to press the play button.
The postal inspector contacted you today in Pennsylvania?
Yes.
What did they say to you?
They asked me the same questions you asked me yesterday about what I'd seen and what I'd heard, and we're asking if I had any more information or whatnot.
Okay, just for some background, this is Richard Hopkins. He's a postal carrier. He's in Pennsylvania. And the day before...
expand it?
I could, but I might. Let me Control Plus.
Just do the left corner, right?
No, then it might block out for folks. Unfortunately,
Oh, okay.
It's just at home. I don't know how it's going to play because it'll
Oh, okay.
expand on the monitor. It won't expand
Okay.
on their. But at home, they can see a good size screen.
Okay, perfect.
But Richard Hopkins was a postal carrier who overheard his supervisors talking about how they were taking the mail-in ballots and they were backdating them so that they would be validated prior to the election, and this was the day after the election.
Okay.
So now the postal inspectors have come and spoken to him. So this is actually a follow-up video, but it's very good. So that's
Okay.
that's the background
All right,
on
okay.
this.
You witnessed your supervisor backdating a ballot to November 3rd?
I did not witness them backdating it. I witnessed them talking about backdating.
What did you hear them say?
They were talking about how the day before, which was the 4th, they had postdated all but one of the ballots that were picked up as the 3rd, but they had one that they made a mistake and postmarked it the 4th.
You heard Robert Weisenbacher say this to Daryl, or Daryl say it? How did you hear it?
Robert was saying it to Daryl.
Robert was saying it to Daryl.
Yes.
They made a mistake on the ballot and they should have backdated the November 4th ballot to November 3rd, correct?
Yes.
And you heard this, and since you did the interview with me in the shadows, what has happened to you at your employment? They were taking an action against you today?
Well, I'm not for sure, but they are bringing up stuff that happened, like in the past.
So they brought up old allegations against you today that were already adjudicated, and they brought those up today?
Yes.
These inspectors have. What was the nature of your conversation with the post office officials that reached out to you today about our interview?
They said that I was, well, because of certain factors, I was kind of implicated as the one who had came out. So they wanted to get my side of the story because they wanted to start an investigation into this. I think this comes from above them, and that's why I told the postal inspectors. I just think they were just doing what they're told. And, yeah.
All right, some dramatic.
I like the ominous music.
The dramatic music there, but to the point there. First of all, big props to that guy. I mean, that takes some balls to risk your job because you're risking it.
100%.
And do the unpopular thing and become a whistleblower for it. Now,
Right.
a couple little more backstory to this. I'll just say it. You can go out there and look this up for yourself, or follow me on social media. I'll tweet it out to you. ABC News and Washington Post came out with stories that said, "Oh, Richard has recanted his story." He had to do a follow-up video that's available on Twitter, on James O'Keefe's Twitter, where he said, "No, actually, this is me live saying, no, I'm not recanting anything." And you might see that article by ABC News, by Washington Post, saying this postal worker recanted. He did not, in fact, recant at all. In fact, he reiterated what he said originally, which is what we just witnessed here. Now, it's real important, in my opinion, that every Republican out there or anybody that voted for Donald Trump coming in the next 2 years has got to hammer home election reform as a major priority for both a national, at the federal level, whatever's possible there for a national election, and locally to prevent something like this from happening again. Because this is just so 100%. Crucial.
Well, and the reality is once you start losing faith in the process, we're doomed. And I think we're already at that stage. We're already on the borderline, whereas I think a lot of people have lost faith in the process. Anyways, I mean, you got 50% of the country that says, "Oh, we should throw the Electoral College out because we want to have
because they lost
not because of any other reason." So we have that. Then we have the fact that you have the mail-in balloting with the harvesting, where they're going out, and you have places like New Jersey where they mailed it out to a ballot out to every single person, and people were driving down the road just pulling them all out of the mailboxes and then sending them.
Oh, yeah, it was nuts.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, Massachusetts did a pretty good job.
They did do a pretty good job.
I would say the one thing that I had a big issue with personally was the fact that they allowed for vote by mail to be applied for online.
Yeah, I have a question about
without
this.
a signature. And
yes,
and most importantly, you could change the address where you wanted the ballot sent to, as opposed to your primary residence.
After all this came out, now I'm not saying it could have been widespread, but you could easily have hit that website. And hopefully there were safeguards in place, like same IP address. You can't order this, you can't do it from the same IP address over and over again. Hopefully there were redundancies in place that would prevent some creative person from going on that website, going up and down and go, I'm going to order for everyone in my neighborhood, I'm going to order one. And when they come, I'm going to go to their mailbox, I'm going to pick it up, and I'm going to pick it up for them. And they'll show up on election day. And,
too late.
And it's too late by then. And they could have, the person showing up said, I could already have voted. When, not saying that happened, but the potential's there. So we need that reform to avoid situations like this.
But we're worried about Russian influence or Chinese hackers, things along those lines on one side, but you don't think the Chinese government or the Russian government can create more sophisticated systems than the Massachusetts Secretary of State's office, who had to, and God bless them, they worked their butt off.
Yep.
All this was thrown on their lap on July 1st, and they had to come up with all of these plans and procedures in place basically overnight, where we've never done it before. It was just the ability to have something go wrong was there. And again, even if nothing went wrong, even if they had all these other things in place, why open it up to conversation? Why even allow? Just listen. If you're doing it online, it has to go your registered mailing address.
Right.
It can't go. You can't say, yes, I live at 123 Main Street, and I want it to go to XYZ PO Box, where you've set it up at a mailbox, etc. Cash, false name. It's
4 days before. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like you can do a huge background security check.
No.
If you're setting it up.
Once those ballots go out the door from the Secretary of State's office, it's gone. It's ghost.
Right. And
that's it.
Yeah.
So
and there are other safeguards, of course, because you have to know the Social Security number and everything along those lines. But why even go there?
Yeah. So the next one we're going to play, just to reemphasize the point here for our friends who may not be aware of what the. Actually, I'm going to pause this. So this is Tucker on the New York Post's website. So this is kind of important here. Let me get the no thanks here. Got to turn the sound on.
Of
Here we
them
go.
played a role in last week's presidential election of other deceased voters. Every one of them played a role in last week's presidential election. As of tonight, there aren't enough of them to alter the outcome. That could change as we learn more. But for the moment, the point is they exist. They are dead, but they voted anyway. The question is, how did they do that? How exactly did they cast their ballots? And the short answer is by mail. Dead people tend to vote more often when you make it easier for them to vote. They're like any other group. And this year we made it much easier for the dead to vote. States sent ballots and registration forms to millions of people totally unsolicited. The pretext was COVID. We had to do this for public health reasons, remember? We had no choice. It was a public health emergency. The effect was to encourage fraud.
So that is another. I'm going to trust that on a couple of things here. One, that Tucker's not lying, and they've researched this and they did this. I'm taking on a little bit of faith there.
Yep.
People can say, "Oh, phone news, man," but no, he probably did his research. The second is that Richard Hopkins, the postal carrier, isn't lying. So you're having two. This is evidence. It's eyewitness testimony. It's dead voters who voted. So this is something that Republicans need to hammer home. And Democrats, I would recommend to you that you get on board if somebody says, let's do real election reform to make sure these types of problems don't happen again, because a lot of people have lost faith in this system because they think it got cheated. And, the vote totals may not be enough to sway the presidential election, but maybe there, in a few circumstances, it could make a significant difference. 10,000 votes here, 15,000 votes here, statewide, especially in a state like Pennsylvania, can absolutely make a difference. So we need to restore the integrity in our election system, or we're going to be in a lot of trouble down the road.
Well, I mean, and the funny thing is, some of my more liberal friends that are like, oh, well, this is just Donald Trump making this up, and his bravado.
We
and
have
I'm like,
evidence.
And I'm like, all right, if you address the ones that we know about, hammer them, go after them, find out who did it, prosecute them, make sure there's real penalties for committing voter fraud.
Right.
I mean, in Massachusetts, we've been pretty good on this. Where there was a state rep that went to jail for a year, for filling out fake absentee ballots, and there was another one who was running who went to jail, I think, for 4 months. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Because you want to make sure. Because guess what? I guarantee you. Best case scenario, the postal inspector or the postmaster, when they're backdating or whatever, they're like, let's go with the most altruistic way. Oh, we got these in. We kind of banged out early to go get some beers. We should have frickin' postmarked these yesterday. Let's just postmark them all, and that way these people don't get disenfranchised. We want to make sure everyone.
Yeah, that's a very generous interpretation.
No, but I'm just saying
possible.
It's possible. Yeah, but since they didn't know, I don't know if Erie is, a plus R town or a plus D town.
Yeah.
Where this section, where this post office was. There may have been a nefarious intent. There may not have been a nefarious intent. And that's the reality. But it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. Just like Tucker said, it doesn't matter that it's only a handful of dead people voted.
Right.
The fact that they voted is a real problem.
Oh no, I mean, I put it this way. Funny case. I know of a friend of mine whose sister, voted for her father, who died 9 months ago.
Am I going to have to call the authorities?
And because it came to the house, and she said she hated Donald Trump, filled it out,
wow,
sent it in, and he was telling me this, and I was absolutely horrified. But I think people wanted to get rid of Donald Trump, or they wanted to keep Donald Trump, and if they had that ability to do it, and they're like, no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
Well, that's what a dad would have wanted anyways. or whatever the reason, whatever the excuse, they go and do it. They're not thinking about there being a penalty. I don't think most people necessarily think they're doing voter fraud. They're either as a FU to somebody, or something something for their team. They're not necessarily.
They don't think they're committing a serious crime,
and they don't think they're necessarily hurting the process and things like that. When I'm talking on the ones and twos, I'm not talking about people who are, the horrific cases that the conspiracy theorists are like, they brought in an 18-wheeler full of unmarked ballots, sort of thing. But if you prosecute them, word will get out.
It's gonna make them think,
and that will put us like, well, I really want Donald Trump for president, but I'm not gonna pay a $5,000 fine for voting for
risk a year in jail
for my dead grandmother.
Right, but also, I mean, we live in an age where everybody's got a TV studio in their pocket.
Right.
It is a lot easier to get caught.
Way easier.
Way easier to get caught now. So that's a huge disincentive, because there's an exponentially higher likelihood that you're going to get caught. So,
well, I mean, let's face it. Just in Massachusetts, you send that in, you've signed your dead dad's name.
It's mail fraud.
Well, it's mail fraud. It's election fraud. But it's not like there's 500 people that could have done it. It was your address.
Yeah, right.
I think I know where we're going to start the questioning.
It's a short investigation.
And they're going to go down and be like, did you do this?
Yeah.
And you've signed it and you filled it out. So your handwriting probably matches the other mail-in envelope that they have.
Right.
And you're just like, explain this to me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's bad.
It is bad.
You know what time it is, Shawn?
Uh-oh.
It's beer o'clock.
Oh, it's beer o'clock.
So let's welcome beer o'clock.
Beer o'clock. Woo! I got don't worries tonight.
Let's try it. So beer o'clock is our fun little segment we're going to hopefully start on occasion here. We've got a great little video queued up.
Hold on, before we got to get this ready.
Yes, that's a good sound. All right, our friends at WGBH Boston's
GUBBA.
You know what it stands for, actually? I do.
Greater Boston Hub or something?
Nope. The Great Blue Hills.
Oh, the Great Blue Hills? Oh,
that's where the original tower was.
Oh, okay.
So this
I got the great part right.
So this is gonna be fun. So what we're gonna also do on the Commonwealth Conservative podcast is we're gonna try to have some fun with our corrupt adversaries. Ooh, that looks good.
Oh, there you go.
In the media. Now, this is from a couple of weeks ago before the election.
Right. Let me just tag in there. One of the main reasons for folks at home, the reason we started to do this is because there was no unbiased, maybe we're a little biased, but no conservative opinion show.
Mm-hmm.
No place for us to push back. We're not invited on these shows. We're not given the opportunity. When we are, it's a small segment, and we get talked over.
5 minutes, you're yelled at.
You're yelled at. They pot you down, and they like to trap you with it's mainly a gotcha sort of thing. Whereas this way, listen, just two guys talking. When we have guests here, unfiltered. This is what we're thinking. If you agree, you agree. Great. If you don't, that's fine. But it's not. We're trying to be. We really are trying to be as unbiased as possible, in so much that we're not trying to slant it. We're saying this is our opinion,
right?
And this is where we're getting our opinion from. And here are some real world examples. And this is one of them.
Well, opinion can be biased, but it can also be objective. Because one of the things here is we want to make a good case for our side.
Right.
And in order to do that, we have to be honest. Because if we're not honest, we'll get called out in a second, and we lose credibility.
And people can tell.
Yeah.
They really can. I mean,
yep.
We put it this way. We've both dealt with politicians way too much.
Yep.
You can smell it a mile away.
So this is from Beat the Press a couple of weeks ago, and I'm probably going to have to hit pause quite a few times because it's.
I have not seen this, so
okay.
For what that's.
I have, but okay. we'll start it early on. Anyway, let's just take a look.
Of years now, stories have surfaced that Joe Biden's son Hunter used his family influence to score an energy deal in Ukraine and that he set up meetings with his dad. The rumors have been debunked by the Washington Post and the New York Times, but they surfaced again this week in the New York Post, complete with transcripts and photos allegedly from Hunter Biden's computer. And then the story gets really weird.
Shawn, how did you explain to me this? How is it? Okay, so one, not true. Not true. It wasn't debunked at all. In fact, Hunter Biden did an interview with, I believe, Good Morning America, where he was on it and saying, well, how'd you get this job other than your name? And he's like, oh, well, no, I basically got it because of my name.
100%.
Yeah.
Which, you know what? At least kudos to him for being honest.
Well, the thing is, this is your run-of-the-mill swampy type of scandal that it's still a scandal. It's still, we'll get a bleep button, but it's still crappy.
Right.
And it's garbage and it's swampy and it's gross. But
I wish my dad was vice president.
But you know, he made
$50,000 a month for
no. It was $180,000 a month.
I'm happy with $50,000.
But he was on the board. Oh, good. Well, you're a little bit of a cheapskate.
My dad was career Navy. Nobody's freaking. Yeah.
But he gets an absurd amount of money for being on the board of Burisma, specifically because his last name is Biden.
And his dad was vice president at the time.
Nothing was debunked. So Emily Rooney, that's a flat out lie. She's going to couch it. I already know what she'd say when she watches this clip. She's going to couch it and say, well, did you leave out the part where I said where he didn't meet with anybody and it was debunked? What they did in the Post and the New York Times is they said nothing was on his official schedule. Like they're going to have a slot for, Ukrainian trashy deal with my son on his official calendar. That doesn't debunk squat. It doesn't debunk squat. So right off the bat, they're telling a lie to set up a false premise. Now the laptop comes into play and it gets better.
The New York Post claims a smoking gun email reveals how Hunter Biden introduced his dad to a Ukrainian businessman. That, other related emails, and a lurid sex tape were found by a Delaware repair tech, purportedly on computers dropped off by Hunter Biden.
I saw stuff that made me uncomfortable, and I felt afraid and fearful of repercussions.
Reporters from the Daily Beast and Fox News pressed John Paul Mac Isaac for details on how he discovered what was on the computers, who he told, where the computers are, and whether it's a hoax.
Is there any thought in your mind that this might not have been Hunter's and might have been somebody trying to set Hunter up?
No.
Meanwhile, the New York Post says they received the computer data from President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani.
The story's sourcing has also raised questions about its authenticity.
In any case, once the story went viral, Facebook and Twitter blocked most users from reposting the story. Twitter said the link might be unsafe, while Facebook simply said they were reducing its distribution.
It's not unsafe.
No.
That's a lie.
No.
Okay. The
amount of videos that get pushed onto Facebook every single day, every second.
Yep. No, this is so
not unsafe
for the liberal media who doesn't actually. So this is what, if your typical day, if you work at WGBH, you wake up, you get your copy or you look at your subscription on your phone or maybe your iPad while you're getting ready in the morning, and you look at the New York Times and maybe the Boston Globe. And then you go, oh, that's interesting. And it was debunked. And then you get in your car back when we drove and you listen to NPR and they say the same thing. Oh, this debunked story about a laptop was, and then you go into work and then you get about your day at setting up this show. And in none of that time do you actually ever stop and think and go, Hunter Biden was a goddamn crackhead. And he left his laptop at a repair shop, so it's very easily this is very easily a in an account that could totally happen. Like this is a story that's absolutely believable because Hunter Biden was a crackhead. Well, and he left his laptop at a repair shop. And when he didn't collect because he couldn't pay for the bill, the guy said, I'm keeping the laptop. And he goes through it.
Or he forgot where he left it.
Or he pawned it. Or any number of factors. But it's real. I've seen some of the videos. You don't want to see the videos. Okay.
I'll trust you on that one.
So it's
my
like
virgin eyes.
But it keeps going.
The New York Post and others have struck back, claiming censorship. And Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey admits they could have handled it better. Still, if this is an elaborate hoax, it's a darn good one.
And Kennedy, I have to say, even if this thing has been completely debunked, this is great. It is right out of...
It hasn't been completely debunked. God damn it. Emily.
Russian playbook with the lurid sex tape and all that, but there were some things of Hunter Biden on that. But this whole idea that Facebook and Twitter in particular were playing...
There's some things of Hunter Biden, right. Like every single thing on the laptop was personal Hunter Biden shit.
This is the Emily Rooney blow-off. And I got another clip queued up from a few years ago of the Emily Rooney blow-off, and it's not as exciting as it sounds, Sean. That where she I've only had like 3 sips of this beer. Where she does this cutesy little like dance around the words where you can tell she knows she's full of crap.
Right.
And she's
carrying water.
She's carrying water because this was a week or two before the election and they couldn't let this out. Corruption, scumbag son, involved in millions of dollars with a shady deal. And it goes on from there if we want to see. Hopefully, I think Dan Kennedy's
What was your take on that? They were saying, hey, this is possibly serious disinformation, 2 weeks before an election, and we're not going to promote it.
This is an issue that Twitter and Facebook, especially Facebook, have been wrestling with for years now, and they really don't seem to know how to handle it. I would point out in this case that it wasn't really difficult to get on the web and go find the stories on the New York Post. It's not like you needed Facebook and Twitter to find this stuff. The other thing is that by acting as they did, I think that Twitter and Facebook ended up giving this story much more amplification than it would have received.
Do you know that there's a name for that? Do you know what that name is? More amplification by actually trying to silence something?
No, what is it?
It's called the Barbra Streisand effect. It's called the Streisand effect. Do you know why?
Do I want to know why?
You do.
No more beer for you.
No. It's called the Streisand effect because a few years ago, the paparazzi were bothering Barbra Streisand and they were taking pictures of her Malibu estate. And she was really pissed. So she went public and she's like, I hate these damn paparazzi, they're bothering me like this. So more and more people then just swarmed. They flew drones by her house. They said like people would stop by with their cars and take pictures of it. So it actually amplified what they were what she wanted to stop happening. So it's called the Streisand effect.
I was gonna say,
but he's a professor of journalism. He doesn't know that.
I was gonna say, but kudos to Dan Kennedy. I usually am arguing with him on Twitter because he's not a fan of mine.
Well, it's fascinating. So
I'm like, all right, shit, I'm agreeing with Kennedy. Oh my God.
I do agree with him on that point. And
I'm sure he'll blow it in a few minutes.
Yeah. But a thing, he invited me, I guest lectured to his class. Do you know what I guest lectured them about? Something very similar to this.
The Streisand effect.
No, not the Streisand effect. I guest lectured about the Christopher Steele dossier and the Russian hacking of the election that spawned the whole thing from the beginning.
Right.
And I broke it down. I think I still have the PowerPoint somewhere, but I talked to him. I said, this was actual disinformation from the Russians that was fed, back-channeled through Christopher Steele. Hillary Clinton's team paid for the opposition research through Fusion GPS.
Right.
All of its stuff. If you actually followed it, it went right back from that. That was the origination point. So a few seconds earlier, we have Emily Rooney talking about Russian disinformation, which it's not. This is absolutely not. Not even with a hint of irony that she recognized what the whole thing that we prattled on for 3 years about with the Mueller report and all the stuff that turned out to be nothing.
Well, that's their cancel culture. One of their phrases. Oh, it's oh, you're a Russian bot. You're a this is Russian hacking. I'm like, oh my God, if the Russians were this freaking good, they would already own us.
Yeah, we would have turned communist a long time ago.
I mean, the reality is, they're I wouldn't say they're a third world country, but they're a mafia run, criminal enterprise, and they're not doing this for any great political ideas. This is done to sow discourse and turmoil so they can make more money.
So let's keep going here. Let's see what Dan has to say.
If they had simply let it play out as it normally does. This is a dichotomy that we've talked about many times. We have a free, completely open web, and then we have these closed systems, and we don't seem to be able to decide as a culture whether or how they should be handled differently.
I agree. I think.
Well, they go into more about the social media aspect of the banning. We see how that plays out. But I
love the body language when the whole time he's talking is like he's shaking his head back and forth with a no as he's talking.
And I'm
like, you're going like this, Dan. So that means you're probably not agreeing with what you're even saying.
So we've gone quite a bit on this episode. We don't want to keep it too long, but. Shawn, would you like to hear the stupidest 2 minutes of your day?
Ooh,
this is a segment we call the stupidest 2 minutes of your day.
Oh, I didn't know. Do we have a soundtrack for the stupidest?
Wait.
Oh no, we've got to do something. Oh, no, that's good. No,
okay,
that's a little bit better.
I got another one queued up for this one.
All right, good.
So the important part about this clip is you really have to pay attention to the language.
Okay.
Because
it's not X-rated language or anything.
No. It's breathtakingly powerful, and it will give you never. It will give you light and power, Shawn.
Okay.
Just listen to this.
I need some power.
Oh. And so I hope that this time that they get it right, and there is not the erasure of those movement builders and justice seekers who have been, laboring and toiling for so long, so the story of this cycle needs to be the people. And we need to all be telling that story to make sure there is no erasure of the role that intergenerational Black organizers, some of who have been at this for decades, the powerful turnout at our reservations, Latinx and AAPI organizers, the disability community. So I think we've been experiencing unprecedented hurt. And Brittany, we met the moment. Yeah. We met the moment with unprecedented organizing, unprecedented mobilizing. And because of that, we've given people unprecedented hope by the very preservation of our democracy.
As of this moment, the House Democrats have lost 10 seats. Just to give you some background on this. Unprecedented hope in their monumental moment here.
I thought she was talking about Erasure, like the 80s band.
No. She
kept talking about Erasure. I'm like, oh, I like Erasure. I mean,
it's a good band. It gets better.
And now the real work begins.
So, maybe it doesn't get better.
That was going to say, you got much better. She stopped talking.
Wait. Let's see.
Maybe this is right now.
So,
let's dig deep in. Right now, this is the civil rights movement. You are writing the next chapter right now. Let's dig deep and do the work of meeting the moment. And the movement met the moment.
Meeting the movement, and the movement met the moment.
It is. Do you know that is an erasure song?
Okay. Do you know what that means? This is like,
I don't know what that means.
It's nice sounding words. That's just
it's words.
The movement met the movement met the moment, and the moment is meeting the movement.
That might be.
Hey,
we might have to cue that up.
The narrative map.
Oh wait, sorry.
We can have that as one of our buttons on our thing. So whenever something really, really intense, we can tell them about their movement.
The movement met the moment, and the moment is meeting the movement.
Because it's an indicator of where we are going to go with the policy. And that is the thing that I care the most about. As I so often say, policy is my love language, because policy violence has legislated and codified disproportionate hate, hurt, and harm on Black and marginalized communities in the most.
Okay.
Policy what?
Well, one, policy is her love language.
Yes.
I'd go with, Marvin Gaye, but that's just me.
Policy
is her love language. That's the stupidest thing I've ever.
Hey, baby. Hey, honey. Tonight we're talking some policy.
Do they know how ridiculous they sound? Policy is her love language, and then
that's when you're in an echo chamber, you can say just ridiculousness all the time. And people are going, you said a bunch of nonsensical words all together.
They're either too afraid to disagree, or they're nodding up and down because they're an idiot. And also, key thing, look for this phrase, policy violence, because now any policy is equated with violence, actual violence. So this is important because, for the left, and she is most definitely a member of the left. Speech equals violence, and violence equals speech. So for them, any hurtful words, anything that disagrees with any policy that you might put forward,
any policy you disagree with,
right,
is a violent
is now
policy.
Violence. So this is important, but it gets better, I think.
Precise of ways, and so now we need to be just as precise in the legislating of healing and equity and justice.
It's so specific. The legislating of healing and equity and justice. Doesn't that sound great?
Well, everybody wants healing.
Okay.
Everyone wants equity.
Okay.
Everyone wants justice.
Okay.
And everyone wants a unicorn.
So problem solved.
Ta-ta.
Let's go home.
All right.
All right.
Ta-da.
Good night, folks.
And so we have to get the story right. We have to get the narrative right, so that people get that now in their governing, they have to legislate in a way that is responsive to those who made that victory possible.
Just to translate there, she's basically saying that you can credit the left with the victory, so you have to kowtow to the left. But in actuality, it's the complete opposite. From a practical political perspective, just so if the Congresswoman happens to watch this episode, you got it dead wrong.
Charlie, maybe. Ayanna.
I don't know.
No way.
I don't know. Would you watch would you watch people talking about you? Of course you would. Every politician, you among them, are narcissistic that way.
Yeah.
You would, even if you're bashing them. But
no, I was gonna say, I don't think I could.
Okay, but
I'd get too upset.
But back to the point, Bernie Sanders did not win the presidential primary. Okay, right. The House lost seats. It looks like Republicans will hold the line in Georgia and will maintain the Senate.
Right.
The left didn't win anything this time around. And so they need to get that, because moderate Dems or just regular old liberal Dems won the day.
We picked up seats in New York.
Yep.
We won a Republican seat in New York City.
Shout out to Staten Island.
And Brooklyn.
And Brooklyn.
Part of Brooklyn.
Yep.
So right next door to AOC. Thanks to AOC. And you know what did it? AOC's attack and moving Amazon out.
Amazon, of course.
So she bullied it out, got us a seat. So I'm like, hey, thanks. But I think the other thing people, there was going to be such a mandate. There was so much, like every single piece of media was all against President Trump. Mm-hmm. Not just kind of, sort of. If they had any sort of mandate, it would be a landslide. It wouldn't be.
Oh, it would be, yeah. We'd be crushed.
A week and a half in.
Crushed.
A week and a half in, it's still not official.
Yeah.
It would have been, at 8:01 p.m. be like, we're done.
Yep.
And that didn't happen.
Little point of fact here. Congresswoman Presley never acknowledged that Donald Trump was actually president of the United States.
Of course not.
She would only refer to him as the occupier of the White House, not as president, which is ridiculous on its face. But I think, needs to understand, like we talk about illegitimacy and not recognizing, a duly elected president. I think it's important to.
I was not duly elected.
Son of a. Right. Let's listen more of our poet laureate.
So you just talked about that policy in language that I think anybody can get with: justice, equity, love, healing, right? These are things that everyone wants and deserves. And yet, too many of the conversations, at least that I've been witnessing, talk about some of those progressive policies that we know are your love language as if they are something to be feared, as if they have cost elections, right? As if they are too risky for us to move forward. Why do you think people have so much fear around the kind of policy that heals?
Why do you remember Caddyshack?
I don't notice where we're going.
But, okay, but when Judge Smales,
okay, yep.
Judge Smales goes, Danny, are you for goodness or are you for badness? I'm for goodness, Judge. I mean, that is the stupidity we're talking about here. How could you, Shawn?
Well, I mean,
equity, love, healing. How could you be against that? You son of a bitch.
But it works.
Of course it works. It works for them, though.
I mean, Obama's entire campaign, his first campaign, hope and change. What are you hoping for? Hope. Good, positive hope. Everybody likes hope. Okay, what are you changing? The bad stuff. Okay, what are you going to change it to? The good stuff.
Yeah.
But that was like literally his policy was we are going to change bad stuff into good stuff.
Yeah.
How are you going to do that?
Yeah.
I'll tell you after I get elected.
Yeah. So let's hear more about how she's going to change the bad stuff into good stuff with healing and justice and equity and love.
Yes, because Ayanna is all about
love.
I've met her a couple times. Not a happy lady.
It's never been done. So, it's never been done. If it has been done, it's probably been incremental. It hasn't been sweeping.
No, it actually has been done. It's called the Soviet Union. It's called Cuba.
Venezuela.
It's called Venezuela. It's been sweeping. It takes over everywhere. And you know what you're left with? Death and misery.
And eating the animals out of the zoo.
Yeah.
Don't forget that.
Or dogs. True. That's why, because people have learned the lessons the left has not learned or been educated about.
Right.
And we got to drive. I mean, this has to be driven home. And by the way,
it's free stuff. Everyone likes free stuff.
By the way, if you're watching this and you're liking this, and because you haven't seen this somewhere before, and nobody's taking on the Congresswoman, no one's taking on WGBH, recognize this and understand that the new dawn is coming, and we're going to start pushing back on this. And we're going to start winning the argument because our arguments are better, and we do love, and we want equity. But we're actually going to back it up with practical, common sense solutions to get what
100%.
The citizens of this country and the Commonwealth need.
No, we need to have good, positive messaging and a real plan.
Yep.
It can't just be rhetoric.
Yeah.
And that's all she has. That's unfortunately what our party has tried to do in the past, is just purely emotional-based rhetoric.
Mm-hmm.
And the Massachusetts voters, way too smart for that. If you give them the option where they can say, all right, wait a minute, that makes sense. That you're saying things that resonate with me. These are real solutions. It's not sound bites. It's not just purely fluff. It's not just we're going to change the bad stuff for the good stuff.
Yeah.
I am convinced, maybe I'll be proven wrong, I don't think so, that there's a sea change coming. And if we give them the opportunity, we'll be able to, especially with things like this, where we can actually get the message out.
Yeah.
Because that's where they've had unbridled access to the media with no counterbalance whatsoever.
We are the counterbalance. We are the pushback. Now let's listen to the last 27 seconds of this.
It hasn't been systemic. It hasn't been transformative. So it's not hyperbole to say we are writing, charting a new path.
Yeah.
I do think it is possible to write budgets that value Black lives. I do believe it is possible to legislate equity, healing, and justice. But it feels disruptive. It feels uncomfortable because it's disruptive. Yeah. It's never been done before.
So
it's been done before.
It feels disruptive because it's disruptive.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was your 2 minutes of stupidity for the week.
I appreciate you for killing some brain cells with my beer, killing some brain cells with Congresswoman Presley.
Hell of an episode.
Hey.
All right, sir.
That's what we're here for.
I think it's time to end this wonderful episode.
All right. Got our going away music.
Remember to follow us on Facebook.
And
YouTube. Send it to your friends. Chairman of the board. The man who's unruly. He is Shawn Dooley.
I don't know if unruly is necessarily what we're going for.
Well, we will be back. We will be back next week. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Share it with your friends. Tell us if you know something interesting you'd like to hear us talk about on the episode. If you know some good media clips, let us know.
Yep, send them along.
All right, Shawn, as always, it's been a great time.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it. Good night to everybody, and join us next time.